Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video was a subscriber request. I'm always happy to do subscriber requests. If you ever have an idea for a video or you'd like me to compare cards that maybe you don't have, let me know. And if I have the decks involved, I'll do the video. I guess this is a really great time to throw in there that if you appreciate my content, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give me a follow and a thumbs up. I've resisted, making this a Patreon account or a membership kind of account because I'd like to keep my content free. But decks aren't free, And I would appreciate. I'd appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up and if you could subscribe and share my videos and tell friends about my channel because it helps me, and I appreciate that. Before I get into the reason for this video, I do want to comment on my last video that I did on the Swiss Rachias deck from 1816, the Joseph Henri Rachias, and I commented in a few places where the spelling was not what I was accustomed to seeing, and I wasn't sure if it was a mistranslation or what was going on with the spelling. And at least two individuals, Robbie Fowler and a Sigali, I didn't catch the second half of the name for the second person, assured me that both spellings that we see and the variation on the Rachias is valid. It was just an archaic form. So I thought I'd pass that along to you. And for more information, go to the comments section of that video and read both of their comments, and you'll see, their explanation. Alrighty, let me flip the camera and, the question, the content today will be to compare specifically the Robledo Dodal with the Tarot Sheet Revival Dodal by Sullivan Hismans, because Tara Relax, the person who made the request, it keeps thinking when she looks at her Robledo cards that the images seem a little wider, than some of the other Dodal decks that she has. And she doesn't know if it's an optical illusion or if there's something to that. So, and she specifically wanted me to compare the Robledo with the Tarot Sheet Revival, which I'm happy to do. I did do a Dodal video, I think comparing 4 Dodals in the past, but at that time I did not have the Sullivan Hismans copy. So I think this is a great time to showcase two card makers together, the Sullivan Hismans and the Robledo, and I'll show you their packaging and everything else too. As for the packaging of each deck, the Robledo comes in a tuck box. Now, the box is a little larger than the deck needs it to be, and regrettably, the top 2 cards are bent as a result of the way, I guess, they slid and shifted in the box. However, they are not cards from the deck itself. So, I can overlook that these cards are bent, and I could probably straighten them out without too much trouble. The Robledo does come with an awesome book. It's a handy, informative book that comes in English and in French. The Tarot Sheet Revival Dodal, the deck is wrapped, right? I think this one is the inner wrap. Yeah, this one is the inner wrap, right? And you get, you as always with Tarot Sheet Revival, you get an incredibly beautiful wrapping. Look at that. Now it looks like I have 238 out of a run of 400. I did not get in on this deck particularly early. So that's why I have such a high number. There are, and then the final cover is like so. It does not come with information about the particular deck itself, but Sullivan Hismans is always so generous and always supplies cards from other decks to wet your whistle, you know. And these might actually be additional cards from the same deck. Okay. Now, as far as cardstock, let's do a little comparison. These, the Robledo has rounded corners, very slight. It's got I guess a waxy feel to it, a smooth feel. Let's take a look at how I have long fingers, and it's a little bit of a stretch for me, but not too bad. Oh, that's a delicious bend. Okay, let's check out this one. In keeping with tradition, and you see that the original corners are sharp, you know, they're squared. So is this deck. Again, it's a I'm guessing it's got to be wider, longer than the Robledo. Let's see. Yep, I think so. Yeah, it's a bit longer than the Robledo, and I can feel it in my stretch here. So I would not be able to riffle shuffle these if I wanted to, because my stretch isn't long enough. But let's see. I think if you had, if you had longer fingers than I, you might be able to do it. Let's see. It's not as waxy feeling, but it is a smooth. You can catch my overhead light up there. You can see a little bit of a glare. Let's see if we see it with this deck. Wow, it's almost like a non-glare deck. Interesting. The Robledo, you don't catch the glare. Okay, but Tarot Relax's question was, is it an optical illusion, or are in fact some of the images in the Robledo Dodal wider than what we see in other decks? So let's take a look at the width. The Robledo is in fact wider overall. Okay, so it's possible that maybe some of the images are just a tweak wider. It's possible. Now, I did measure a few points, from here to here on both cards. And in some cases, throughout the deck, the Robledo is a smidge wider. In some cases, I think it could be an optical illusion. Case in point, the sleeve. We see that this looks a lot wider than here. But notice that on this corner, where the shoulder sleeve, right, the sleeve comes to a point, it's been covered over with ink. So it cuts off visually that corner. Here, it hasn't happened, right? We see it fully. So this really does look wider. But when I measured from point to point and point to point on each card, they were the same. But then there were other points that were different. Like, I believe I measured from here to here, his girth, right? And he was a little wider in this one. But it's very subtle, just enough to look different. Now, as far as background goes, I don't think you can see very well, but the Sullivan Hismans is more white, and this is more beige or some kind of a cream background. I don't know if you're interested in seeing all the cards. Certainly, both of these card makers are considered, exceptional card makers. And so if you're in the neighborhood for a nicely made Dodal, you might consider these two. And so I'm offering you a point of reference between them. So you can make an informed decision. Now, one of the things that people feel is really special about the Dodal is, and this may have changed recently, I haven't seen the deck personally, or I haven't even seen too many copies of it, but it is believed that there has been a discovery. I mean, it's a fact. There's been a discovery of a type 1 Tarot of Marseille earlier than the Noble. But up until that was found, and I haven't seen too much specific conversation about if it's entirely 100% in the style of type 1. I don't know. But at the time of the printing, the Dodal was considered to be the earliest completely consistent with TDM1 style. And, from 1701, I believe the date is. I should know this. It's either 1701 or 1710, something like that. Of course, I'll check later. But here we have the 4, right? Now, the 4, as Flournoy, in his research, indicated that the 4 was really an indicator of the particular printer. I think his name was Mermet. And not necessarily because it's the 4th card. However, who's to say, that he didn't choose that card to put it on because it was the 4th card, I don't know. And it's interesting that, perhaps the original printer or publisher who is responsible for the mark of 4, maybe in a nod to his mark, maybe that's why we are accustomed to seeing the emperor with this posture. Maybe that was why the emperor has that posture. It was because of the original person who might have been responsible for TDM1. It's also been pointed out in this book that the Pope has a shepherd's staff rather than a triple tier scepter, right? Which is another indicator of TDM1. We have the tonsured individuals. We have some variation in color between the two, between Robledo and Sullivan Hismans. They have a different take on the color. Up. Sorry about that. And notice that the Cupid is blindfolded, and that he, is flying in one direction, kind of postured in another, but it's a little bit of an awkward position that he's got going here. Let's see, what looks to be larger? Well, this whole area of the, of Cupid here looks larger than this area. So yes, in person it does look wider. Her area here looks wider than this. See that? In any event, the Dodal is really a great deck to visualize the the qualities of TDM1 here, in one spot. We have the canopied chariot. Notice the spelling. And in the Hermit, notice the yellow on the knee, which I've spoken about at length in the Germanic decks And maybe they got it from here, or they got it from a TDM1 source. So maybe here is the mystery, right? Those Germanic decks perhaps were definitely familiar with the old, or an original. And we have a hood that at some point, some decks make it look like maybe a satchel or a backpack or something, but it's clearly a hood with a little tassel. Now, the optical illusion of color could be in part why this one looks a bit wider. I mean, this is a much cooler color, so it might, seem smaller than this warmer blue. But optical illusions do account for something, I mean, optical illusions really do make things look differently, that you would never believe. So that could be a case in point. Let's line up this with this. Okay, and we can see that this is wider. However, just like in the sleeve of the Fool, you see that this color was cut off, right? You see that was cut off. So it really does look smaller because it was printed over, and here it was not. Notice the wheel going in that direction, counterclockwise. For export, I think that's what that says, or intended for export out of France. Oh, so I'm noticing the Robledo sticks a little bit. You have to just be careful. And we have the fingers here rather than behind him that we don't see. And he's got the tongue sticking out. So although this video began as a response to a subscriber request to validate whether or not in some areas the Robledo may be a little wider, it's also been a good opportunity to really show to master card makers, number one, and also to show characteristics of TDM1 in a deck that consistently shows, all the characteristics of TDM1. And I don't even know if I mentioned all of them as I'm doing it, but I'll try. Now the wings definitely look wider from here to here, don't they? And then from here to here. I can't cover it completely because then I won't. But it does look like they're wider, it does. So I don't know how much of that is. Now see here, this wing looks fuller. It looks like it's drawn a little wider than this one, that there's a difference. So it's possible that in the areas where maybe the engraving plate is damaged, and maybe in those areas, the modern day publishers had to fudge it a little bit or to complete it in the way that they thought they could complete it, right? Maybe that's, another reason why there might be differences between some cards. I'm not saying that that's the truth. I'm just saying that maybe that's a possibility. All right, now we have a face in the belly. He's also got his tongue stuck out. And then we have the flames of the tower looking more like it's coming from the tower than in TDM2 style, where the flames look like they're coming from the heavens or the sun. And the toppling of the tower is that way. So if you only have a budget for one of these lovely decks, then I'm hoping my video will help you decide which one you prefer. As I mentioned, the Robledo has a more cream beige background, and the Tower Sheet Revival is more of a white. It's a bit crisper. The Robledo bends like a dream, quality cardstock. I'd always, personally, I'd have to overhand shuffle the Tower Sheet Revival deck, because I wouldn't want to damage it, because I don't have a wide enough stretch, although I do have long, look at my fingers, I have long fingers. Long and thin fingers. Yeah, now look at the sun, looks wider, doesn't he? The face of the sun looks wider. I'm going to pause this and I'm going to measure and see what I come up with. Give me a sec. Okay, I measured. So the width across the face, cutting through the eyes, is the same on both. But this does look, well, maybe I should have measured it from down here, because he looks like he's got chubby cheeks. And it does look like this area of the ray of the aura of the sun is a little thicker here than it is here, meaning that this is a little smaller. But yeah, consistently, it does appear to be a little bit wider overall than this other deck. Here we have the banner attached to the horn. And we have a cloak, a full cloak, not just a scarf, and then we have a kind of whatever that is. All right, that was it for the Triumph cards. I'll just go like this for the pips. And we notice the 6 is written not quite right. Let's see how the 7 is. The 7 is also written not quite right. And that's not Robledo, that's the Dodal. Okay, we have 8, 9, 10. Notice the direction of the quartz. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So they both honored the the way that the numbers were put on. I imagine because of the choice of color, of background, that it has something to do with how crisp the Tarot Sheet Revival looks as compared to the Robledo. It's just got a real crisp look. Oh, somehow I mixed these cards. How did I do that? How did I do that? Somehow I mixed them up. Oh my goodness. Okay. And I guess I'll go like this. And the cups are numbered until we get to 4, and then they're not. But then 5 is. So you see a difference in color saturation between these two decks. Oh, so maybe it is kind of important to show the two decks in full. And here we see the number 6 properly done. The 7 is missing as far as number. I mean, not that it's missing, but it just wasn't put on the card. And then we have 8, and 8 appears to be correctly written in both. And observe the 10th card leaning to our left. A difference in the color. These chalices are more mustard. These are more golden orange, yellow. So aesthetics probably have a place in how you make a decision. Like, which one do you find more aesthetically pleasing? My boyfriend. And that really looks like a hat. You know, I know people think that that's the chalice lid or something, but I think that's really his hat, because he took his hat off because he's wearing a wreath. And for whatever reasons, his tunic covers the chalice, which is not nearly as wide as this hat. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right, but it's just my 2 cents. So decidedly, the blues are quite different. Like these Tarot Sheet Revival blues are deeply saturated. And these are have more, has a green. It's more like a green blue. The yellows are different. There's more of a mustard color in the Robledo, whereas the yellow is more bright in the Sullivan Hismans here. I think this probably is an overhang that at some point people misunderstood and made it a window. Or maybe some people see this as a window in the first place. I don't know. But, like a thrown overhang, right? That's how I interpret what we see. And I think, at some point, people who were making these cards thought that was a window, so they just made the window. So, but that remains to be seen what that is for real. Again, a difference in color. Now here we have a nice saturated green, but here we have like a muddled some like black or gray over yellow. So it's not, in this instance, the green it doesn't appear as it does appear in the Robledo. And we see it again here. We see the green stockings of the king. We see an attempted green, maybe, you know, and maybe, I don't know, maybe they didn't use green. Maybe they used yellow and black overlays to make green. I don't know. So I can't speak on that. Okay, I'm just going to go through the batons. Yeah, this one sticks a bit. Just be aware of it. And perhaps if you use it more frequently than it won't stick. Okay, again, with the batons, we have the thing with the 7. Let me see about the 6. How was the 6? Yeah, we have it with the 6 and 7 again. But then the 8s, 9 are fine. Let's take a look at these batons. Oh. Again with the 6 and 7. We can compare the court cards. Again with the green. The Robledo uses, you know, legit green. And the Tarot Sheet Revival perhaps is mimicking the way green might have been created, the illusion of green, with maybe, what I'm guessing, maybe like yellow and brown or yellow and gray to make a green. But again, of course, we see the difference in the color of the reds, and the yellows are quite different, at least in person. And here's where we begin to see, you know, all the confusion on the Knight of Batons, right? There's frequently confusion on what is going on with the Knight of Batons. I mean, here, look at this. What is going on here? And I must have the 2 in a different order. I don't think it's stuck. Three, 4. Hopefully my 2 is in here somewhere. And there's the 2. Okay, we have the page, the knight, the queen, the king. And notice her pine cone headdress, right? And now we have these cards do, you know, this Tarot Sheet Revival, there's no sticking at all. If that's something that interests you to know, no numbers on the coins. So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed this comparison between these 2 really nice decks. If you have any requests for any videos, ask me. I'm always happy to oblige. I really am. I just ask in return. Anyway, if you enjoy my content, let me flip the camera. If you enjoy my content, please do me the favor of subscribing, sharing, tell your friends about me, thumbs up. It will help keep this channel free without layers of membership and stuff like that. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.